Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us in this webinar tonight. My name is Randy Goers. I'm the Director of City Planning for the City of Tampa. And this is the first of three community meetings on a project that is going to look at sea level rise and regulations to mitigate the impacts of sea level rise. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on an introduction because all the information that we'd like for you to know is in the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brian Cook, will introduce himself, and then we'll just go ahead and get started.
All right, well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday evening. This is a presentation for sea level rise and regulation in Tampa. So I am Brian Cook with University of South Florida in the Florida Center for Community Design and Research, and that's within the School of Architecture and Community Design. So I'm going to close out the webcam and we can focus on the slides here. So all right, Randy, are we seeing just the cover page?
Yep, we're all set.
So some housekeeping before we begin. A description of the project. So this is a new research project for City of Tampa. You can provide feedback or comments. We have a project website, which you'll see down there at the bottom. You can refer to that at any time, and we'll have a space there for you to submit to us. Within this broadcast, you can put comments or questions anytime in the questions window, and that's monitored. Everyone is on mute, and so we should be able to, if there are questions, unmute. But for the most part, this is an introduction to the project, not really getting into any findings or anything like that. So if you do have questions or comments, use that chat on the side. So we're guessing this should take about 25 minutes. And so here we go. So the project.
Hey, Brian, before you go off,
yeah.
The chat box will not work for any of the attendees. If you want to raise a question, put it in the question box. The question box is also very, it's got a little quirk to it that one of us has to actually respond to the question for all of you to see it. So it'll take us a little time to sort of work through that so that everybody can see the questions. The one thing, this will only be a presentation. There won't be any audio. We won't have time for anybody to have any audio comments. It'll all just be through the question box, and we'll be able to respond to those questions. Or afterwards, you can go to our webpage, the City of Tampa planning webpage, and enter questions in the comment box that we'll be able to respond to as well. Okay, Brian.
All right. So you all have met Randy Goers with City of Tampa. So he's managing the project for the city. I'm Brian Cook, also involved. We have some other people, Stephen Fernandez with Urban and Regional Planning at USF, Anna Chang, graduate research assistant, among others who are also pitching in for the project. But then as we're getting going on this project, we are engaging a wide constituency of people, mostly within City of Tampa, so that we can be bringing people along with the information that we're finding, but also engaging them to understand what they know. And then it's nice when we have meetings and as we check in throughout the project process, we're able to feed information across all these disciplines and help people to all understand each other's perspectives and the different issues or findings that we're encountering. So then also down there with Plan Hillsborough, we have Sean College. So anyways, it's a nice team that's all participating with the project as we go forward. So what is this project? The purpose is to identify alternative regulatory options to address long-term sea level rise. So we're focused on sea level rise, and we're focused on the policy and regulation aspect of that topic. So to boil it down in a nutshell is what could we do? So, and I'll get into the process for how we're going to be answering that question in just a moment. And then this project is funded by the Florida DEP, which is very nice. So this project is building off of some previous studies. Sea level rise has been studied a little bit here in Tampa, not a great lot, but a little bit. So in 2017, as part of the Parallel Flood Act and Comprehensive Plan Update, there was a sea level rise vulnerability assessment for City of Tampa. And just this year published was a study of drainage outfalls within the city, not just in this location, but in various locations around town. If you Google that, you'll find it. And then also a project I've been a part of is not for City of Tampa, but Hillsborough County, but include City of Tampa. And that is the Hillsborough County Community Vulnerability Study, which was released this year, and you can Google that one also, and it's located in the Hillsborough County website. So little background there. And so that's us. We thought just to kind of get things going here, we'd like to find out who you all are. So we have this poll. Try to locate yourself within one of these groups. So are you local government, Tampa resident, academic community, development community, or other? So we will open the polls, hopefully. So we have 21% local government, 41% Tampa residents, 3% in the academic community, 8% in the development community, and 28% have identified in the other category. So, so that is where we're at. Thank you for doing that. So before we get into the nitty gritty, I'd like to just introduce this topic of sea level rise. It's something I've been working on here for a little bit with Hillsborough County and that, and also with USF. And to me, it helps to understand a little bit of the background, just to kind of lay down some context. So in our globe, let's call it, there is, we're in this big ball or sphere with a hot core, and so there is uplift. It's like bubbling of water or something, right? And this kind of distorts the surface upward, and so we have uplift, and so that's something maybe we're used to and familiar with and are recognizing with mountain ranges and that kind of thing.
Hang on a minute, Brian. Hey, Brian, the poll is still stuck on the dashboard. Hang on.
Oh. Let me know if I need to do anything.
What is in your window? I think you're.
Oh. Oh, there's our poll. Okay. Can you see my?
I see it, but I don't know if can someone in the audience use the question to tell us if they see the poll or the slideshow? I see a yes. Does that mean poll?
All right. How are we doing? Currently on a little history slide. Okay, we can see the slide. All right, we'll keep going. So, right, uplift in mountain ranges. So, along with that, over history, you see down there at the bottom is a chart of actual sea level fluctuation over time. And so when you have those vertical areas, like mountain ranges, that sea level has encountered those vertical aspects of our globe at different times and periods, and then they kind of go at a rapid pace, and then they sort of slow down or change course over time. And so you can see that, say, for example, maybe more dramatically on the West Coast, where they have a lot more verticality. And you can see these terraces that were built up where water was sort of at a certain period or a certain level for a while, and eroding, causing erosion into that hillside and a more vertical space. And then the sea level changes and does the same thing for a while, and you get these escarpments. So you can see it's like a heartbeat over time, as far as the sea level going up and down. So then in Florida, we see that, and that it's super flat in Florida, basically because of our historic geology and being an outwash plain. But so we don't have that dramatic difference, and so we're much flatter. And so that evidence of sea levels changing is much further out into the Gulf of Mexico, and into the Atlantic Ocean. So you can see in that drawing there, that's our sort of terrace that was formed at one point. And then there's a second one that's in the interior of the state. And if you guys have been down to the sort of the spine of the state where Bok Tower is and those kinds of things, there's a little bit of height there. So anyways, this evidence of the water level fluctuating throughout history. Now, this issue of sea level rising and falling is kind of new for us because since we've had civilizations, it's been fairly flat. So in the last, let's say, 3,000 years, it's really not had that much change. And so as we've built cities and colonized places, especially near the water's edge, we're used to that sort of static environment that's more stable. But over time, there has been this kind of rise and fall that we've had to deal with. So now that we're in this moment where sea levels seem to be rising, there's been some research done, and a lot of scientists that are doing quite a bit of work with that are here in our region. So we have our own climate science advisory panel, which has been investigating this and has shown that since 1946, we've had 7.8 inches of sea level rise. And then you can see the projections down there on the right, looking at the different rates and trying to get a gauge on the expectations going forward. So there is the NOAA high level, which you can see by 2060, almost 3.5 feet. And over time at an exponential rate gets quite high. Then there's the intermediate rate and the intermediate low rate, which actually in the report they suggest not really to be using. So anyways, this is another report that you can go to and check out, but those are the scenarios that we're looking at that have been identified by research in our region. And because of that, and because of the physical evidence, so there's places that have sunny day flooding where when they were built, they seem to be fine, and now the sea level has risen and is starting to cause flooding just with high tides, not even with a rainy event. We're noticing this happening in different areas, and our leadership is recognizing that we need to address the issue. It has a potential for great impacts, and we'd like to be prepared. So we'll get into what this project is. That's sort of the background, just getting a handle on sea level rise and its history. So now with our project, what we're trying to do is understand what are the codes and policies that we have in place and do an inventory of that. And we'll look at codes and policies that either have a direct implication, so let's say seawalls, and what is the policy for that, but also other policies that maybe could be leveraged. For example, ways of building up funding to protect or mitigate areas at the coast. So some of these may be leveraged, some have a direct effect. But then also while we're doing that, we'll be trying to compile information for homeowners so they can understand what is this regulatory context. And our aim is to present this back in a graphic and easy to understand way so that it can be beneficial for our community here in Tampa. So then along with that, part of the baseline conditions and inventory process, we're going to be mapping what are the effects of different scenarios in our region. And part of that is to identify when does sea level rise according to these different projections. When does it actually start to make an impact? Like when does it start to affect structures and properties? And when does it become a real mess? So you can see some of the initial mappings there, starting to look at those different scenarios that were identified on the Climate Science Advisory Panel, the grid there of different scenarios. And so these are the ones that we'll be using as we go forward. So then once we have the inventory in hand, the next step is to understand what other people are doing. So other places may be already implementing things pertaining to sea level rise, maybe because they're already being impacted at greater levels than we are. But then, so between looking at other places and looking at academic research, we'll be making an inventory, trying to understand what options do we have. And as we go forward, especially once we get those first two things accomplished, we'll be communicating this to you all, to the public, and to the stakeholders, administration, and sharing results. With that process moving forward, we will be looking at some of these policies and how some of them may apply differently or may be more of interest or have more impact in different areas. So looking at where are we potentially impacted and what are the best or most realistic policies that we have at our disposal or that could possibly be implemented to better the situation. As I said before, well, let's see. So once we're done with that, we'll be looking at cost benefit, about making an evaluation of which policies are working where and to what effect. But also, what would it look like? Some of these policies may have spatial implications and affect the places where we live, work, and play. And so we're going to try to make that graphic and illustrate it so that it's easy to digest and understand. Again, the idea here is what are our options? And as we go through that process, we'll come to recommended implementation plan. So this is getting to an understanding of what things may work in which places and what policies are working well in other places, and understanding pluses and minuses of each of those. Yeah, going forward and creating some kind of recommendation to the city. And so this is a study. It's not. This isn't going to culminate into final policy doctrine, but it will be become recommendations. So the goals here is to be prepared. We got our eyes open, looking forward and looking around, trying to understand what other people are doing and what are the options, just so that we can be prepared and put our best foot forward. Another part of this process is to both inform, but also be informed by regional experts and community members to start working our way through this as a community. And then to gather options for consideration and to put those in an easily digestible, understandable format. We'll do all the pain of reading through all these code documents, and I'm a designer, so I always like pictures more. With the schedule, the task 1 and 2, which is that inventory process, we should be done with that by mid-January, and we expect to have some kind of stakeholder meeting at that point, not determined yet, but we'll be working towards that in January. The whole project needs to be concluded in May. So this is our first of, this is just as an introduction, as a first of a series of public meetings. We will have 2 more going into 2021. And again, there's the reminder, this is not policy, it's a study to identify our options. So next steps, based on what I've introduced today, we're gonna be preparing for our next public meeting and workshop, and would like to know, based on what this study entails and what issues you might be considering, what things would you like to know more about. We can bring in experts, we can present information and research. So what are the things that you'd like to hear going forward? And you can put those into the project website. We'll have a place for you to comment, and we'll tally those up and move forward with that. So that is the introduction for this project, the land regulatory response to sea level rise in the city of Tampa. So if you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them at this point.
I will say also, again, it's Randy Gores of the Planning Department. On the, and Brian, can you go back one slide just so they can have the link to the webpage?
Yep.
On that webpage, there is a form that provides a few questions about what, if there's anything specifically that you want to learn out of this project, or you think, you believe that we should take a look at, or if there's anything that you want to make sure that we cover as we move forward. As Brian mentioned, this is the first 3 meetings. We wanted to introduce the project, let the community know that it was going, that it started, that it was going on, sort of the parameters. And over the next 4 months, we're going to be digging into the details and to develop the strategies. And really, the key premise that sort of created this project was that if sea level rise is going to affect our community, where is it going to be? Where in our community is it most vulnerable, and what part of our regulations are going to be most affected? Is it a building height? Is it a zoning issue? Is it a structural issue? And I don't think it's going to be the same issue all along the coast from the preliminary data that we've seen. But I think it's going to be a combination of regulatory impacts. So that's what the purpose of is, to try to figure out where our regulations need to be shored up, and also about when do we need to actually start planning for those amendments. Do we have how many years do we have before the impacts really start to become noticeable in our community? So with that, I think I don't see any other new questions in the question box. This presentation is being taped. It'll be aired, available on YouTube probably in a week through the city's website, and will be available for questions either through this window or through the city planning website. Brian, there's a question about what type of how we're collecting the data, and are we using existing research? Are you able to respond to that orally?
Yeah. So, well, there's right now we're in the middle of the inventory part, and we've been working with our advisory group to identify all the policies in City of Tampa that may relate to sea level rise and documenting those. As far as what are other people doing and what research has been done about this. Based on some of my past work, there's a few key sources. I don't really have them off the top of my head, but there's some there's a few key resources that describe policy and adapting to sea level rise. I think also going forward, we'll be reaching out with a survey to identify what are some other resources or sources of information or places that people know of that may be good to review. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers it enough, but we do have a foundational list of places that we're researching and documents, but we'll also be looking for input.
There's a lot of good questions, and we don't have the answers tonight to most of them, but they'll help us frame some of our investigation over the next several months. So I appreciate everyone's input.
So are we all set? There's one question I see, is it over? I think mostly it is, but I think Randy's sorting through the questions.
Yeah, the presentation's over. We're just compiling questions now and responding to the questions for those that are here. We'll also take the questions and we'll take the questions and the answers, and we'll have those posted on our webpage.
Yeah, and the input is valued, and it'll help direct us as we move forward. So
with that, the presentation has concluded. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. It was short, which is good because you have the rest of the evening for yourself, and we've gotten quite a bit of input for the next between now and the next meeting. Appreciate you all.
yeah, and thanks for attending.